Welcome to the Evolving Expert podcast, where we meet at the intersection of business strategy, conscious leadership, and aligned living to support who you are becoming. I'm Vanessa Emerson, your host, and here's what we have for you today. We are with Mathew Blades. Now, Mathew has an official introduction that I'll share with you some things about him, but I'm going to tell you first and foremost, Mathew is a friend who is also my podcast coach. And so we're going to see how we do today with if we get A plus or how we do with this. Mathew is the reason we're having this podcast at all is because Mathew took me by the hand and said, hey, we can figure this out. As someone who had podcasts in the past that didn't really go anywhere and weren't really syndicated, it was really just more on my YouTube and on my website. Thank you for lifting me, Mathew, and helping me help others by pulling it together in a way that is able to get our voices out there in a much further and more helpful manner. So thank you, first of all, for that.
No sweat. I'm happy to be along.
And let's say, who is Mathew? Let's learn a little bit more about Mathew. So Mathew has 27 years as an award-winning radio and TV show host before he walked away from the industry to pursue a bigger mission, helping teams break free from the cycles that hold them back. He's the creator of Learn from People Who Lived It, which is a really fabulous, that's your podcast. It's a really fabulous podcast. And his Break the Cycle framework has impacted organizations like Kia, Hyundai, and Keller Williams. His work has even caught the attention of Howard Stern. We're going to have to hear more about that another time. Please help me welcome Mathew Blades.
Woo! Great job, Vanessa. It's so cool to see this coming to life because I remember our initial conversations and you was just like, I have all of these ideas and I want to do all these great things, but I don't know how to package them. And now we're here and you're doing it, and I think it's just awesome. So thank you for having me along.
Thank you. And I think too, it felt like so much work,
Yeah.
and I would say that as I'm starting that, I've even told you, it feels like so much work, but as you pointed out to me, with each episode, I'm getting my systems and my processes together where I can see where in the future I will be able to just roll this right out. I really encourage others to jump into podcasting. I think it's such a great idea. But with this particular podcast, we like to start with asking the guest to share either a mindfulness or breathwork exercise or something that you use in your life when you want to turn the corner is the idea. So those who are listening have probably had a very busy day. They're maybe even in the middle of their busy day. And in order for us to kind of turn the corner and settle into this pocket with us, into this more calm, mindful space, what would you suggest as a mindfulness exercise that people use for that type of activity?
Transcendental meditation changed my life. And I'll start with that bold of a statement. I have one of the most busy brains that I'm aware of out there. And, this brain of mine has a tendency to just go wild and go rogue and go all over the place. And I just have always, my whole life, had a really difficult time honing that in. And for a lot of years, that chaos was kind of my superpower. It enabled me to be in a lot of places, do a lot of things, always be going, always be doing, but I got to a stage in my life where it was like, I don't want to keep going and doing. I want to slow down and sit and stop and just see what it feels like to be in still water. And transcendental meditation was a game changer for me. And the reason that it was a game changer for me is because of what I just mentioned. When you have a really busy brain and somebody tells you to just sit down and be quiet and just get with your thoughts and just breathe, you're like, there's no chance. There's no chance that I can just sit here and think about nothing and breathe. And TM is based on a mantra the proper way to learn transcendental meditation is through a teacher. We've got 3 centers here in the Phoenix area where people can go and it's like you pay based on your income kind of a thing. They have this really cool thing. And if you're a veteran or you're a teacher or you have one of those types of jobs, the cost is almost nothing to learn it. but they give you a mantra, and you basically, you sit for 20 minutes twice a day, and you repeat this mantra over and over and over again. And it's not like you just close your eyes and start saying the thing, but it's a really beautiful meditation because you just sort of sit there for a second with your eyes closed. And then the mantra finds you, right? It finds you in your head and it says it's time to go. And
Oh, I love
for
that.
me, that's anywhere between 30 seconds to 60 seconds where I'm sitting there and then the mantra finds me and I can just start repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And that helps me because I feel like I'm doing something while I'm meditating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. That's awesome. Is it a mantra that is specific for you?
So I
Or
always tell people that it's more of a sound than it is a word or a sequence of words. Like I don't even know what my mantra means. It's and there's two different schools of thought. Some people share their mantra with others. Some people are
yeah,
told like it's very sacred and don't share it.
yeah.
But it's like a sound to me, and so that's how I would describe it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't know
Yeah,
that about transcendental meditation. And
yeah.
I don't know if you know, I'm a certified meditation instructor. And
Really?
yeah, yeah, meditation is like amazing. It's one of the best parts of life. In fact, it can be dangerous because we can want to escape, right? And just get into meditation because it feels so amazing. But I learned a different system. I learned the primordial sound system, which sounds very similar.
Tell me
And
about
there,
that.
I wondered because that was Deepak Chopra from the Chopra Center is where
Yeah.
I was certified. And so
Oh.
I believe they started with transcendental and they modified and I believe, and I may be totally telling this wrong, but then they created this other style. But with primordial sound, we have our own mantra. And that's why I wondered if it was like personal for you. With primordial sound, it's based on the time and place of your and date of your birth.
Mm.
And then it's reflective. It's called your bija. And there's three words. There's Om at the beginning, OM, which is reflective of divine, of God, all that is, and the creation. And then the last word everyone has is Namaha, which in my mind, I always picture it like all that is like encompassing me, but I'm that word in the middle, which I don't speak out loud once I
Mm.
learned it. So it sounds very similar. And that word is really more of a sound that's based on when I popped out on the planet.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
super cool. I'm
wonder,
gonna look into that.
when they taught you, was it that it was specific for you, or does everyone have the same sound?
I've wondered that, and I've talked to a couple of people, and it feels like maybe there are a few words that are out there
Oh,
and
okay.
available, and then when they teach you, they kind of give you a word or they give you your sound.
Yes.
So I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure I could get online and Google this and figure it out, but this is the way spiritual practice for me is my relationship to what's happening. And so I
Mhm.
don't necessarily need to be interfered with what Google thinks.
And I'm one of those inquiring minds that has to know. That's why I like
Yeah.
asking. So thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
learned something really fun and important, actually. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage anyone listening who is not already meditating to listen to their gut, because if they, in fact, are seeking quiet, if they feel like, because the world's so noisy, the world's especially noisy right now. Meditation is such a great way, and thank you for sharing that. I didn't expect for us to go off on and have a whole topic about this, and I love that we did.
It's a fascinating topic and it
It
changes
is.
people's lives.
It
And I,
is.
I agree with you. There's so much noise right now that we need to find ways to turn the volume down.
And there have been so many people that have told me, I just don't think I can meditate. And then they
Yeah.
they find the right thing for them, whether it's walking a labyrinth or journaling or looking at a
Mm.
candle with their eyes open and concentrating and like allowing. I mean, there's so many different ways. So thank you. Thank you for bringing meditation in. It's just
Yeah,
so
you're
yummy.
welcome. You're welcome. And for just so anybody knows, there's a close second place in my life for shamanic breath work, and that's a little bit more of an aggressive breath work. But I have come to fall in love with that type of breath work over the last few years as well.
That we're gonna have to have another conversation about that because I
Okay.
don't know what that is. So we're gonna dangle that carrot
Okay.
and we'll come back and have another conversation about that. And I might have to
Okay.
Google that.
Yeah, look, I'm serious. Look up my teacher is Lucas Mack. He's really really well known. Lucas and his wife Hala. They're really really incredible teachers, and he's the one that taught me shamanic breath work, and it's aggressive, but like in a good way.
Is that somebody here in town in Phoenix area?
I think he lives. I think he's in the L.A. area now.
Okay, cool. I will definitely made a note. Thank you for sharing so much
Yeah.
wonderful, yummy stuff already. Well, let's jump into we have three areas that we typically will discuss whatever's on your heart, or is there a key concept or an idea that you would like to share with us around business strategy or career strategy that has been helpful to you, that might be helpful to others?
Yeah, it really what's coming through for me this morning is the idea of have the hard conversation. This is probably the best advice that I could give a lot of people, right? Look, you can find business strategies, you can find sales funnels, you can find all the tools you need online to help you be better in business. But ultimately, if you don't have these conversations that you need, that you need to have to advance your career or to get some clarity around your career, this to me is where people that I work with the most get the most stuck, is they are oftentimes sitting on a hard conversation. In fact, the statistics say right now that a third of all employees right now have been avoiding a conversation for more than a month at the office. And if you think about that, what kind of an impact is that having on people? Again, the studies say that every one of those conversations is probably costing a company between $7,000 and $10,000, and it's costing productivity as well. So, look, there's a lot of reasons we don't want to have the hard conversation, and I understand every single one of them, because for most of my life, I was somebody who did not want to have the hard conversation, but I have come to understand the importance of them and the clarity that you achieve on the other side of those conversations and the value of what those two things are. So now when I get a hard conversation in front of me, I'm kind of like, let's go. Let's get right to it. Let's call them up and get on the phone and let's have this conversation in a kind, loving, honest way and find a way to get through it.
Yeah, when you have the tools, right? When you've learned the strategies, you've learned I guess it's like really having the tools. You've learned the communication skills and the understanding to be able to navigate that. Can you give us an example of what type of conversation you're referring to?
Sure. I think that, well, it could be just about anything for anybody, but let's just say there's a pretty standard example, which is you work for somebody, or you've got some sort of a manager or somebody that you have to report to, and there have been some holes in communication over the years, or maybe you don't feel as though you're valued enough, or perhaps you feel like more attention is being paid to somebody else and you warrant some of these things. Whatever that is for you, whatever kind of stuff you're bringing and thinking about every single day when you get to work, I'm saying that's the conversation that I want you to have with somebody. And I can give you a quick example in a story. So when I was in my radio and television career, once upon a time, I worked for a very, 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 very challenging human being. And he just did not have very many people skills, and was just very rough around the edges. I remember one time I was on the air, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I always did mornings, Vanessa, and so I was on from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. every single day. And I had just done a talk break on the radio. It was like 7:05 or something like that, and my hotline rings right after I'm done. And what he says to me is, he says, "That's the worst thing I've ever heard on the radio. I don't think you should talk for the rest of the day. Just play music. I'll see you at 10." And right in the middle of the show, that's taking place, right? And so you can imagine what that does to me as a talent, right? It shuts me down completely. and it just immediately sucks all of the energy out of it. And this kind of kept happening for a while, and it started to turn into a trend where I did not want to come to work. I did not
Mm.
want to work for this guy, and I'd be calling my agent every 2 or 3 weeks, going, "You got to get me out of this place. This guy is crazy. Like, I cannot work with this guy." And then I was chatting with a friend of mine, and this friend suggested that I just talk to this guy. And you can imagine, like, no bone in my body wanted to sit down and have a civilized conversation with this dude. I didn't want to talk to him about it. I just wanted it to go away. But what I've come to learn is that I don't think that's how it goes. I don't think we can ignore problems away. Eventually, we have to tackle them. And so, look, I got a few tools, and I approached this boss, and I said, very honestly, because I believe there's 4 parts to every productive conversation: honesty, tone, word choice, and articulation are the 4 that I kind of come to all the time. And so
Oh,
the most important piece, though, is the honesty piece, because you really do have to bring honesty to the table. And what I mean by that is, don't just tell me how you feel, tell me how you feel. And I'm saying that different on purpose, right? Like, one version of me could come in and said, "You're a terrible boss. Every time you talk to me, you make me feel like crap. I hate working for you. This is no good." And that's true. Those were honest. Those would be honest
yeah.
statements.
Yeah.
But instead, what I chose to do was to go into his office and say, "I don't like our working relationship. I don't like the way that you come at me when I make a choice that you don't agree with. And what I really want to do is I want to find a way for us to have better communication so that you can keep doing your job and I can keep doing my job. I really like it here. I really like being on the air here. I love this show. I love this community." See, those are also very honest thoughts.
Right.
And
Right.
so when you approach people honestly and you say, "Look, I'm not trying to create World War III here. I'm trying to move through this in a way that helps you and helps me. Is that possible?" And I know that it is. I know that it is possible to have very difficult conversations where both people can walk away and feel like something was accomplished. And that's what I'm about. I am here for those hard conversations now because I've come to understand how important they are and how much, and here's the most important piece, how much clarity they offer all of us when we're done with them.
That's really powerful. I feel like we're going to talk about conscious leadership in just a minute too, but this is also conscious leadership, right? Self-directed, self-managed leadership. It's about, and what I love about what you said, honesty, tone, word choice, and articulation,
Yeah,
like that whole package and how we present when we present with that tone of not making the other person wrong, right? It's really just more about here's what it is and be in that from your heart. So those are those. I've heard it called courageous conversations or this sort of a thing, right? Is this part of what you teach? I'm
it
curious
is.
about.
Yeah, it is a lot of what I teach. And to segue into conscious leadership, I think there's a tool that I offer most people that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, which is something I call unemotional accountability. And I think we're
Hmm.
filled in a world that wants to hold everybody very accountable, very emotionally. And as I just articulated with that story I shared with you, the way that my boss came at me with all of that emotion, it wasn't a productive conversation. He might have felt better. He might have felt great. Like, I fulfilled my role. I did my boss thing. I yelled at my employee, but it shut me down. And so, for my money, there's a way to hold people accountable unemotionally, where you can just approach them from a curious mindset, where you can approach them in a way where they don't have to get defensive and you don't either. You can approach them in a way where they don't have to feel shame around the thing that they might have just messed up. And it could just be a teaching opportunity. And so, in terms of conscious leadership, I would ask all leaders to jump into that mindset. How can you start holding people unemotionally accountable? because this to me is when you're going to get the most growth out of folks. And one of the things I'm really high on is working for development focused leaders, not bottom line leaders. So, people who are trying to make everybody around them better. If we can do that, just really start to imagine what culture could look like if we were all in there just trying to figure out how to make each other better versus tear each other down.
Oh, from your mouth, right?
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to
I
that.
mean, that we could apply that politically. We could apply that in so many ways in the
To our
world of
families, right? To our
family.
families.
Yeah. And that is conscious leadership, right? We can be a leader as a parent, as a sibling. We can be a leader in so many ways in our community. And this whole idea of being conscious, self-directed, um, self-managed, and really tuned into our gut. And I love that you are sharing these communication skills and leadership skills with who's your primary, like the best audience for you, like ideal fit, like what middle management of employees, executives, where's the sweet spot for you?
Yeah. I have a term for it. I think my audience is career centered individuals or career minded individuals. And what I
Love
mean by
that.
that is people who think about work when they leave work. So if you have if that's you, you're for me.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So if you think about work when you leave work, I'm probably somebody to think about.
That's pretty much everybody, right?
Well, not everybody. A lot of people just have jobs. A lot of people just
Well,
have jobs and they go and they do their thing. And when they leave the office, they don't have to think about work. And that's the difference. There's people who have jobs and people who have careers. And I've always and there's a distinction there. And neither's better or worse or better. Like there's none of that. This isn't about bad or better or better or worse. Any of that stuff. This is just about how you choose and what you choose.
so I think what I'm hearing you say is they think about career in a way of making it better versus thinking about career in a way that they don't like what happened at work
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Thank you. Well,
Probably
we
people
are,
who are trying to chase, they're high performers in some way, and they've got
yeah.
real lofty goals for themselves, and they'd like to really achieve some great things. And I just have seen. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, right? I've been around the world, and I've done a lot of things, and I've played at the highest levels you possibly can. And what I have witnessed single-handedly, whether it's my family, my friends, my career, any extension of me. I have watched communication be the central reason things either win or don't win.
I got nothing to say after
Right.
that. I mean, period.
It's just it. It's
Kaboom.
the whole game.
I
It's
mean
the
that,
whole game.
right? Well, thank you for sharing that window into, what you do beyond what we're talking about here
For
today.
sure.
And I want to also, if we can, let maybe sit here again for just a minute more, or a few more minutes in this business strategy, conscious leadership realm, because I'd really love it if you would share, as someone who helps others develop podcasts, if you could share with us why do we need a podcast? Like, aren't there enough podcasts in the world already, right? So if we could look at it from the standpoint of why.
Well, look, it's a big question, and here's the truth, right? It's going to be different for everybody. Everybody's gonna have very different reasons for wanting to have a podcast, and so for most people, I believe they want to use it because they're looking for some companion piece in their business. They're looking like they have something going right now for themselves, and they would like some sort of a companion marketing arm that could come along with it. And look, the algorithms are what they are right now on social media. And if you're building a business, well, what's your goal? Your goal is visibility.
Yeah.
That's it. That's A, B, C, and D. Like if you until people can see you and they know you're out there, they can't use you. They can't buy your service. And so, how can you be seen more? And to me, there's a lot of things you could choose. Podcasting just happens to be the one that I'm the most invested in, and the one that I believe the most in because of its flexibility, because I can, you can do what you and I are doing right now. A couple of people jump on, have a great little conversation. And when you're done with this, you're going to have anywhere between 5 to 15 pieces of really great content that you can be pushing out on your social media channels to help people understand who you are and what you're all about. So that's part one, right? Part one is visibility. People can see you because you're creating content that's out there. And if you're not podcasting, if you're not recording much content, how are people finding you? And there may be other answers to that, and we can go down that rabbit hole another time. But so visibility, pretty important. I believe that the second and most powerful reason to have a podcast is because of how it allows you to connect with people. You think about if you and I had just met, Vanessa, at NSA, and I said, hey, I'd love to get to know you a little better. Let's jump on a phone call. And, we have that phone call, and you tell me what I do, or you do, and I tell you what I do, and we figure out who we know together. And that's one version of that conversation. But today, we chose to podcast with each other. And as a result of that, the audience doesn't know this because we chatted for 20 minutes before we actually hit the record button and jumped on. But you and I were sharing some very deeply personal things with each other. And now you and I have connected with each other in a very deep and meaningful way. And there is a thread now between us that is more powerful than if it were just some average Zoom call or some average lunch at the Thirsty Lion. You know what I mean? We've talked about things that are bonding us a little bit more. And so if you want visibility and you would like to connect with people that you want meaningful relationships with, this is a beautiful format to make both of those things happen.
Agreed. That was beautiful. Thank you. And you know what I'm finding as a newer podcast host is the episodes take on a life of their own.
100%.
Like you walk into it with like some idea of, I think we want to go here, here, and here, just so we have like a rough idea. And then it just develops. And I think that's really delicious, when we just allow it.
Such a good thing.
Yeah,
we used to say in the radio business all the time, Vanessa, we would say the best shows were where we did nothing that was on our planner that morning. Because we planned every episode, every break, every detail of the show. And the best episodes were the ones where something happened and we just took off and went in a different direction. And so I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Which is kind of like what's happening with this episode.
And it's fine, right? As long as you've got people that want to keep it on track, but what I would say, word of caution, if somebody's going to start a podcast, like you can't just show up every day and go, well, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Yeah, I mean, you do have to have a starting point. And if you're smart, you have an ending point too. But then let whatever's going to happen in the middle.
Well, some things I really appreciated about the work that we did together was that you did give me like an idea of a script, which I actually have open here, but I kind of glanced at it a couple times. But I feel like after I used it as a crutch, as like a support, my first several podcasts. But this is now episode 6, and I feel like now I've kind of got it. And I'm also feeling like there's some freedom to flex. And so I want to encourage others that are considering doing more podcasting that you'll get it. You'll just make it be yours. And the other thing I learned from you was that it's okay. There's a freedom in being me. There's a freedom in being authentic to who I am, and the way I create my podcast is going to be different than the others. And I don't need to be just like every other, there's certain podcasts that everybody knows in the world, right? I don't have to be Huberman. I don't have to be these other types of podcasts. I can be what I bring. And that's the beauty of it, is to be you. For those who are out there saying, well, I'm interested in, what did that look like to work with Mathew? I know that we do have a link, which I should have right here in front of me. I've got it here. I'll put it in the show notes because it's a little bit long, but I do have a web page where we can, I'll be sure and put it in the link or the notes down below. Where you can go and learn more about working with Mathew. Now, Mathew has Mathew Blades, and Mathew is one T, Mathew.
My
We
mom and
got
dad messed that whole thing up for me.
Well, it's unique and it's right here on the Zoom, so we can see that too. And MathewBlades.com is your website for those who are
Yep.
interested in working with you as a communications coach or a speaker, that sort of thing. But for podcast coaching, we have your podcast on here, but it's
Just
a
reach out, reach out. So all the podcast clients that I work with are 100% referral based, and so it's
really
just people that I meet. So if I meet somebody that wants to do that business with me, then I like you, I take them in and I work with them. But it's not something that people are always like, well, where's your website to like look at all your information? I don't have one. I've been doing this for 30 years of my life. There's nothing I don't know. It's all up here. And if you want my help, then just call me and we'll work on it.
Oh, I really encourage people to do that. It was so helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
is there an email that you'd like to share?
Sure, it's just Matthew at MathewBlades.com. So just keep in mind that's one T and it's Blades.
That's a really cool name, Blades.
It
It's
worked
not your
out for me,
stage
didn't
name,
it?
is it a
It
given name?
is. It's a
Is it?
stage name. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
my legal last name is Matthew Anderson, but when I got I'll give you the quick story first. So when I got on the radio at 19 years old, I was actually believe it or not, this is so embarrassing to admit, but I was calling myself Magic Matt Andrews. That was what I was calling myself on the radio. And because there was a really famous Magic Matt that worked in Los Angeles, and I idolized this guy, and I was like, I'm just going to call myself the same thing. And I got hired by this program director in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and he said, "You're hired," and then the next sentence out of his mouth was, "But you have to change your name. I don't like it." And so I sat with one of my buddies, Brian, on my I think my front doorstep one day, and I said, I need to come up with something that sounds like it could be real, but that it's like it's just flashy enough. It's just edgy enough where it's like a little different.
edgy. Yeah.
And yeah, play on words, right? Edgy Blades. And then I had a buddy of mine in radio who said, every great radio personality has 3 syllables to their name. Matthew Blades, Tony Fly. And he was giving me all these examples. And so that's what it was. And that's how it came to be. And now it's funny because I just don't use Anderson except for tax forms. That's about it. Everybody in my life knows me as Matthew Blades, and I'm just fine with that.
That is such a fun story.
Right?
Oh, you picked a good one. I was thinking it was your birth name. I was going to say, how cool for you that you ended up with a name like that with where you
Yeah,
were.
I know. Would have been amazing, but I'm
That would
just
have
an
been.
Anderson.
But
I'm just an
Anderson,
Anderson.
as an Emerson, I can relate to your Anderson.
Do people ask you if it's SEN or SON?
Yes, and they ask if it's two
Okay.
M's and all the things. And I always say like the electronics, and then they're like Emerson,
Yeah.
because I guess there's not really Emerson Electronics anymore. So for a while there were.
They are probably they probably are a thing of the past
Probably.
here pretty soon, but they're
Well, it's
still
not
around.
even my name. My name is Greer. My last name is Greer. So this is my husband's name, right? Emerson. And he's also from Minneapolis. So it was probably one of those Norwegian names.
100.
Well, anyway, we had a diverge. That's so fun. But what I want to be sure and say about the podcast coaching, which we were talking about, is also highlight that you will be at Weevolution.
Yes, I'm so
Weevolution
excited
is
about this.
I'm so excited too. That is our speaker development meeting that we hold annually. And so Matt's going to be there talking about, how to do a podcast, sharing with us a little bit about the equipment, and, the why, the kind of the how. So we've got a whole presentation for you who would like to come and put your toe in the water there at Weevolution and learn more about podcasting and so much more. So Weevolution is jointheweevolution.com. I'll be sure and put that link in there as well. And that's coming up May 1st and 2nd. So right around the corner. Well, before we roll on out of here, I would just love to ask you a quick question
Okay.
about alignment, living in alignment. We talked about transcendental meditation at the beginning. We'll wrap up back here with aligned living. What does that mean to live in alignment to you? What does that mean?
So when you asked me this question earlier, what I wrote down was to pour into me and to be connected spiritually. I think when I'm in alignment, I'm taking good care of myself, and I'm really spiritually connected to something deeper than me, something bigger than me. And I don't care what that is for people. If that's God, Jesus, Allah, meditation, a tree, nature, the ocean, a lake, your
It all
best
works.
friend, like, yeah, it all works, right? But for me, when I think about aligned living, and I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but I really believe that aligned living for me is when I know that I'm the most important person in the world, and I treat myself that way. And I take time for me, and I listen to what my body's going through, and I unplug when I need to unplug, and I plug in hard when I need to plug in hard. But that's really what it is for me. What is it for you?
Um, I think it's similar. I think thank you for asking that. You're such a great host asking the questions. For me, it's listening to my gut. It's like a feeling,
Hmm.
it's a knowing. I know if I'm like aligned, and I know if I'm aligned to, I would say, source energy, divine, God. I know each day, each moment, whether I'm in alignment or not, based on my internal GPS, right? It's that feeling. Um, I This idea of being an empath, I believe I am that. I feel things strongly. And so
Deeply,
I,
yeah.
I feel like I can know at any given moment in any conversation or any thought, whether that's an aligned thought. But I feel like I had to um, hone that skill over the years, right? From when we don't listen and it backfires on us, or we should have listened, kind of thing. So thank you for asking that. Those are the juicy conversations to me. Is the whole idea of remembering that we are spiritual beings in human bodies, and that's the core, even through the big and challenging things that happen in our life. It wraps us back to kind of where you and I started today, recognizing that there's something for us in all of that.
Well,
That's
and it really does start with
alignment.
something I mentioned just a second ago, and I hope you don't mind that I go off on just a small tangent
Please.
right now, but uh, you will, and by you I mean who are, you listening to us right now, whether in your car or in your working out or whatever it is, you will never get aligned until you start to pour into yourself. And I have a super fast exercise that I can roll everybody through if you're into it.
Please
And
do.
okay, so we'll just fly through this really fast. If you're able to, I want you to get out your phone and open up notes, or just write down on a piece of paper. It's totally fine, but just write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on that piece of paper or in those notes, what I want you to do right now is I just want you to think about who are the most important people in your life, right? Who are those folks that when I say that, who are the most important people in your life? Who comes to mind? And I want you to write these people down on that piece of paper or in your notes. And it's different for everybody. Some people put family and friends, some people put coworkers, some people hate humans, so they put their dog, and you can, or your cat, right? Or your cat, and you can do whatever you want. But I really want you to think about the 5 most important people in your life. And now what I want to give you permission to do is add one more. If there's one more person that you want to put on that list, like, that's fine. Because some people have big families and they list all their kids, and they're like, I need more than 5. And I'm like, okay, take one more. And so the exercise that I got put through this exercise about 5 years ago, and it's the moment for me that it really started to shift, was because the guy who gave me this test, he said, I want you to look at that list right now that you've just created, and I want you to tell me where your name shows up on the list.
Oh,
And I said, my name is not on the list.
yeah.
I do, when somebody says, who's the most important person, I don't think about myself. And that's the problem, is that I don't think about myself as important. And we can't start to shift our world until we realize that we're very, very valuable people and we really matter. And what we need is critically important, because I can't be the best Matthew for Vanessa if I'm neglecting myself all the time. And look, if you grew up like I did, you were probably taught some version of stop being selfish or don't be selfish or stop thinking about yourself all the time. And what I'm asking people to do is like double down on how important you are, double down on what you need. Now, that doesn't mean you just, piss on everybody and you become this like terrible person to be around. But what it means is when you wake up one morning and you need an extra 5 minutes because your head's a little scattered, you take it. When somebody calls you and they ask you to do something and you just don't have the capacity to do it, you say no. And that's what I mean by prioritizing yourself. And there's a time to stretch. There's a time to push. There's a time to dig a little bit deeper. But I know that my own life, I did that too much. I gave to other people before I gave to myself. I put far too many people ahead of myself. And as I always share with everybody, that's not a great long-term strategy. You can do that for a while, but long term, that becomes very difficult. And so everything that Vanessa and I have talked about today, if you don't view yourself as somebody who matters, why would you do any of it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. Thank you for that.
Changed my life. When he said, "Where's your name?" I was like embarrassed.
Well, I think we're used to following instructions, like we're told make a list, but so like I
Yeah.
think there's like an inherent like focus outward, but then there is like the obvious, why don't we think about ourselves first? And I had a hard time. I was making little notes over here, and and then I went back and put my cats in when you said I could put animals.
Yeah, right.
But it's kind of like like that whole exercise is really juicy because it does help you stop and recognize like, oh yeah, like how am I loving into those folks too? But this point of we should be patient one, we should be a person one at the top. Thank you. It is just delightful to spend time with you every time. I have the chance to have a conversation with you, Mathew. Thank you for being here. Now, before we go, is there one last final thought, anything you feel called to share before we roll on out of here as we tie a bow on this beautiful episode?
Just be the person you want to be in the world. The world's feeling very tense right now, and so I just ask that you're the change you want to see. And so if that means that you have to get softer and you have to get a little gentler and you have to get a little bit more compassionate, then be that person. But if it also means that enough is enough and it's time for me to have this hard conversation that I've been putting off with a lot of people for a long time, do that. But be the change that you're looking for in this world, because the world, I believe the world's filled with a lot more good people than it is bad people.
Great.
But for some reason, the bad people are a little louder. And there's actual science behind the hater nation that we can kind of experience out there right now. It's actually, scientists have proven it's easier to form hateful bonds than it is loving and generous and kind bonds. For some reason, it's just, and this because anytime you get wrapped up in a gossip train with somebody, it's so easy to pile on. But fight that, resist that urge, and just be the person that the world needs today.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It was so much good stuff to go back and digest. I'm going to really enjoy editing this episode. Thank you again for being here. MathewBlades.com and Matthew@MathewBlades.com is the email to reach out. Before we go, a reminder to like and subscribe. I was told by my podcast coach I need to say that.
It's critical. We have to invite people to be at the party, right?
That's
invite
right.
them to be at the party. Yes.
We'd love for you to be back for future episodes. So in the meantime, have a fabulous couple of weeks. Lean into your heart, listen to your gut, try some meditation, be well, and we will see you in a few weeks. Thank you so much for being here.